Thank you for watching Conscious Consumer Network. The live stream broadcast is free to view. You can pause and rewind live broadcasts to catch up, or view shows at a later date by accessing our free archives of all shows. Check out our broadcast guide to see what's on. You can show your support by donating to our network support fund. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, or subscribe to the monthly newsletter for updates. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.
You're back.
Okay, we're back, or at least I am, and this is going to be the show that I'll be opening called the Open Disclosure, which is my, availability to take on any of the questions that has been sort of percolating through the social media and online stratosphere. And, I just thought it would be an interesting opportunity to perhaps address some of these questions live on air and perhaps put to bed any uncomfortable misnomers or give clarity to things that perhaps people felt needed to be brought to the attention of myself or other people. I myself am quite transparent and have nothing to hide. I'm very honest about the fact that I try my hardest to create a better world, and sometimes I give support to campaigns which are outright frauds. And when I've found that out, I've come out and I've outed them. And I'm always honest and apologetic to those people who may have led down the garden path. But what I'm here to do today is to say, I'm here, I'm available. There's been a lot of unnecessary trolling and stuff going on. And just to let you know, Angela hasn't disappeared. She's actually still online with us, still listening in. And I think she'll still be participating in the chat. But this is going to be my show to speak to those people who have been, behaving a little bit badly. Let's just say that my Sunday, which is normally spent sorting out my broadcast guide, which ended up being an absolute mess this week because I was so distracted by dealing with the trolls. And I am sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful to those people I label as trolls. That's just the sort of colloquial online name for people who attack or are aggressive or bullying and who use sort of unnecessary force to get their points across. However valid your point may be, it still comes across like force, which is perhaps why I've kind of gone, whoa, I don't want to know. If you guys want to talk to me, there's got to be some order in which this is done. Let's have a civil discussion. I myself am not beyond sitting down around a table and actually just laying all the facts on the table. Let's have a look at this mess and disentangle ourselves from it. Because I myself, all I'm after is the truth. I'm not following any agenda. I'm not here to push any psyopses or distract from any real necessary causes that need the attention. I really want to focus on what is real and relevant. And if there are things which need to be brought to my attention, I thought that I would give this opportunity to everybody to have their say and perhaps come and talk to me about it. So I'm doing a very brave thing of actually opening up the telephone line. So Vicky, if you do have a toll-free number for me, please do put it on the screen now. And we welcome people to call in on this number and have a little chat to us. Just a warning in advance, anybody who is abusive or becomes attacking or derogatory without focusing on what is relevant and what is necessary will be told to leave the call or will be taken off by Biggie. I'm not sure how it works back there, Biggie, but you'll be handling it for us. But I am here and open. I mean, I don't even know who's going to come through on the telephone line. It's literally like a lottery. So feel free to call in, and whoever pops up on the screen, if you have a dignified and decent question or point that you wish me to address, I'm more than happy to address it. So do feel free to make yourselves available to us. We are available to you. We wish to communicate. We wish to have open and transparent negotiations. We wish to bring things around the table, lay them out clearly. We wish to disentangle ourselves from any untruths or mistruths or manipulations and machinations. Really, that is it. That's all this is really about. So please feel free to send in any questions as well via our online chat function. Again, same rules apply. Please be dignified and decent. No labeling and no swear words. She's a effing this and effing whatever. We're not interested in that. Okay, I've had all the labels thrown at me you can possibly imagine. So you can keep coming with those. It's not going to change the facts at hand. All it does is distract with perversion, diversion. So, Biggie, there were some questions before we left Angela's show and went on to this one. I just want to come to you and say, do we need to deal with anything that was kind of spilling over?
There's one.
Did anybody leave a name with that? Okay, Michael, thank you for that comment. And yes, that's very much appreciated from you, Michael. Your points are fair and valid, and thank you for the respectful communications, much appreciated. You know, I respect that you say that this has happened, but yet I do need to see a little bit more than someone who I've never met. I mean, am I supposed to trust you that this is in fact the case? Just a little video or something on YouTube from these kids, maybe smiling, playing in the garden, having a little chat to us, telling us they're okay. It would be lovely. You know, their voice was heard across the world, and we do have due concerns for them. It's not yet proven that Christy was in fact the issue. In fact, as Angela rightly pointed out, there were several restraining orders against the father, Ricky Dearman, which, you know, by far eclipsed anything that Abraham was supposedly guilty of in his past. So, you know, let's kind of stick to the facts, and I suppose I don't have to make any excuses for saying that I'd like to hear from those kids, and I appreciate what you've come in and said. And when I come to understand and know that these facts perhaps are different, the truth that we know now is not the truth as it will evolve or become apparent in the future, believe me, I'll be the first person to come out and say, do you know what? I'm not invested in that ideology or that way anymore. This is now what I am invested in terms of what I believe and where my stance is. But right now, I'm still looking at what is important, which is the story that those children told, okay? And I just do not believe that they could have made that up. They were very specific about who was who, birthmarks, experiences, all sorts of things, you know, bodily hair, that kind of thing. So I'm going to focus on the testimony of the kids for now as my evidence, and that's what I think is important, is not to get distracted by the fluff and all the stuff being done around it by various other parties. I see Angela is back with us. Angela.
Yeah, just my tuppence worth on that. It for anybody that has a truth radar with regard to children's disclosures, the apparent retractions of the children in police custody were more painful than the actual original disclosures of horrors. And I'm not suggesting whatsoever that the children be drugged and paraded a bit like where hostages are told to say, oh yes, I believe the cause and I'm not under duress, while every fibre of their being is showing that they're clearly under duress. And whilst it's a politically correct and comfortable thing to say, oh, leave those poor children alone to settle into foster care, I can't help thinking of the Russian guy that Rupert's going to interview, Eugene, whose son was deprived of internet and phone access and reduced to 4 times yearly contact with his father, which was supervised, allegedly for him to settle into foster care and state care. And his son was threatened that if you make waves, you won't be in such a nice foster home. You'll probably go into a group home and things are going to get very bad for you. So I do not want to generate that kind of solution where the children submit and comply with half a cup full of horror under threat of a full cup of horror resuming. So I think it's time for us to drop the political correctness and remember that, you know, children need protecting and they need a voice. And we're not voyeurs, we're not drama queens, we don't need attention. We've got plenty of areas we can work in. So those arguments don't stand up, in my opinion. But thank you for the polite question.
Yeah, thanks. Biggie, any more questions? Yeah.
Sorry, unmuted. As I said earlier with Mel, it's another area where we can agree to disagree. And as I keep harping back, one, I believe the children. Two, I stayed in Belinda's home for 5 days. I am the kind of person that asks difficult questions. I asked difficult questions, including going all the way back to Iran aid and the money and so on. And based on 5 days and, you know, 5 days face-to-face and interacting around Hampstead for a year and a half, I find that the lady's biggest crime was intermittent naivete. And as Mel said, it's better to be naive and sometimes get things wrong than it is to just protect your, you know, public profile and do nothing. I actually am full of admiration for the lady. You know, I am. And I've published online my findings from asking the direct questions about Iran aid. And, you know, Belinda was very forthright with me about inheriting 4 million and allocating 1 million to make her dream come true of making a difference in the world. And then having been overextended in that, possibly through naivete, and having been hammered. And as a victim myself of an online smear campaign, I can empathize. I think what we need to remember in this business ongoingly is things are not always as they seem.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to say that I welcome the opportunity to actually meet Belinda again in person. And if she extended that invitation to me, that I would accept it. I wouldn't turn it down just on my own personal bias. I would actually like to sit down with her myself and have a conversation with her. I know Belinda, what she looks like. I met her previously at a conference where she was representing Lloyd Pye's work. And I had a brief conversation with her. This is back in 2009, October 2009. And that was the extent of my conversation. She was trying to sell me a book on behalf of Lloyd Pye. And I actually did buy one from her, which was called Everything You Know Is a Lie. I bought a book from her. It was written by Lloyd Pye. And then her name kept coming up again and again and again with regards to the Holly Gregg stuff. So, of course, when I debunked or thought that I had gone through all the evidence which made me look differently at the Holly Gregg hoax case, obviously Belinda was involved with that, which is where I became more acutely aware of her. And that's where kind of, I think, my sort of aversion to her came about. But again, I haven't had any negative or unfortunate experiences with Belinda personally. Everything I know that's negative about her is things that I have been fed by other people or things that I've gathered online. There's a lot of disinformation out there. So again, I'm willing to be wrong. And you know what? If I am, I'd like to sit down in front of Belinda myself and apologize to her, because I myself have been involved in being suspicious of her activities. And I'm not saying that I believe that perhaps there isn't some truth to those suspicions either. I've not had the opportunity to sit with her and have the kind of discussions that Angela has had. So that is my position on Belinda McKenzie. Biggie, are there any more questions?
Not so
What do you mean by professionals? You mean like investigative journalists? Because they don't exist, all right? I know I've worked in the world of mainstream media. You toe the line or you get fired. If they don't want you to print a story, you don't print a story. And trust me, they come down on you quicker than you will believe. So, yeah, leave the professionals. Who do you consider to be the professionals? The paycheck junkies? The ones that have to bow to an editor who's himself in on most of the cabal's, scams? I've worked with Max Clifford. I actually did a television show with him. I worked with him in a face-to-face situation for a show we recorded for Channel 4 in the UK. It's actually, I was on TV with the guy. I can't believe that, because he's now doing jail time for multiple assault charges against young girls and stuff. So, at that time, I had no idea that that's what he was about. And I thought it was quite a prestigious thing to be working with him. Now I realize down the line that this guy, he's so far and up to it. There's stories about him taking the fall for some of the people who were going to be outed. And this is, possibly what's happened. So, we're not always in possession of all the facts at times when we get involved in working with certain people. Like, for example, when I got involved with working with Kevin Annett, it was simply a case of someone put his documentary film on my timeline. I watched it and I was in tears. So I contacted the guy for an interview. We did a second interview, at which point he said he was coming over to Europe. And I said, okay, well, if you're in Holland doing anything, let's have a cup of tea. And next thing I knew, he was staying at my house. And next thing I knew, he had stayed at my house twice within 6 months. And then I'd realized what a complete fraud he was. And so I outed him. And I was only able to do that through collecting the evidence of working with him closely. So I had a lot of material evidence to out him with, which I did. And often it's a case of, and I've said this to Angela earlier, as an investigative journalist, you have to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. It is so difficult to wade through all the shit without coming out with some of it on you. But instead of people being grateful for the fact that here you go wading through the shit so that they don't have to, okay, what they do is they judge you for having shit on your hands. And instead of being grateful that you've dug through it all and were able to actually, in the end, pull out the truth, or perhaps, it's almost like, understand that sometimes perhaps this is like a deep cover thing. We have to go in with the intention of trying to work with these people, and it always is, trying to work with them, trying to see what their structure is, what their architecture is within the organizations or within the ideologies or whatever it is they're trying to play out, be it a utopianist ideal such as New Earth Nation, or be it a law system such as the ITNJ or the ITCCS. You've always got to weigh up the mechanics of the probabilities, the viabilities, and a lot of the time that can only be deduced through going through the experience, which is a lot of the time what I've done. And quite a huge amount of knowledge as to what works or what's relevant, what actually does create a better world, and what just hurts and distracts. That's not something up front. That's something you kind of work out along the way through experience, but you have to go through the fire. So I appreciate people saying, hands off, but I'm not putting my hands on. All we are doing is talking about it online, wanting to know what happened to those kids. Where are those kids? That's all we want to know. It's not a case of I have been handed their medical files and I'm looking through their medical files to see if I can personally deduce whether they have been abused based on the medical evidence. That's not what we're doing, because I wouldn't even be comfortable doing that myself. I'm not a medical professional who is able to make those kind of aspersions. What I simply want to know is what happened to those children. Are they okay? To me, their stories seem pretty real. I just like a proper impartial investigation around this whole thing, much like I'd like a proper impartial investigation around the Holly Gregg thing. So there's a lot of it. There's a lot of these perversion, diversion tactics that have been used. Angela, do you want to come in here?
Yeah, just to say that a researcher that's temporarily resting, because we all need to catch our breath on this, Charlotte Alton, Charlotte Ward, Jackie Farmer, Jacob Farmer, she's used many, personas, although she's never too shy to say, this is who I am. She's done jail time for whistleblowing and campaigning in the past. She left the UK in order to safely broadcast from Brazil, and Iceland. And, she actually did go there. She was a huge part of this campaign. She ran a blog called Hampstead Research, which is what the troll opposition of mimicked with their Hoaxstead research site, in which, in my opinion, they tried to mimic the Holly Gregg outcome, which was to put it to bed as a hoax. But we actually did go there in terms of forensic analysis. We had professionals volunteering their time globally. I mean, these were professionals that were court experts, university professors, forensic analysts, and so on. The amount of evidence that we accrued was phenomenal. Now, she managed to broadcast safely for a year and then did get hacked. She did get credible death threats. Her wonderful husband, supports her, and then he freaks out and says, look, your life's on the line. And they withdraw for a while. I'm hoping she comes back into the fray, and we do have 90% of the evidence at least downloaded. So even though your perspective and CCM perspective is we don't need details, we just want to know if the children are okay, the evidence does exist, which not only corroborates, it magnifies and multiplies the children's disclosures.
Wonderful. Thank you, Angela, for clarifying that. I had no idea that that bundle of information it existed. I'd be very keen myself to have a little peruse of that when it becomes available. So, we're invested now. We're emotionally invested, and we've got some skills in investigation. We may as well have a look at it. I'm not saying that anything I say about it or any opinions that I render about it is the way it is or what anyone else must think. But, if that information is available and that those details are available and the evidence is available that is pointing in certain directions, it should not be ignored. Okay. Vicky did say that there were some questions with the telephone number that was put out. We apologize to anybody who was trying to call in. Please do give us another try. We are willing to take questions live on air for anybody who wishes to call in and converse with us in a respectful manner. This is obviously a time that has been put aside for a live, open forum, discussion, debate, question and answers, whatever you want to call it. And we've done this specifically because we want to make ourselves available to those people who have been saying some pretty nasty things about us behind the scenes without actually taking the time to even converse with us, engage in just proper communication. We're all here trying to create a better world, and ultimately that starts with us. And one of the problems of this planet is the fact that there is a lot of war going on. So what are we doing warring with each other? We're just creating a microcosm of a much bigger problem, the macrocosm, which is what we're sort of trying to address. Because as you know, if you take all the money spent on war, you could use it to feed, house, clothe, medically care for, and educate every person on the planet. No one left behind. And that's all the poor people as well. So as far as I'm concerned, it has to start with us. And I'm not interested in fighting with people and labeling this one and crying about this one and just getting ugly all over the show. And I've seen some pretty nasty things being put out, YouTube videos, comments on the videos. And when we try to deal with them, anything that we say that's even slightly credible gets deleted. And it's just a case of there's a lot of people who are deliberately invested into misunderstanding and causing havoc. Why that is because they're trying to cause distraction. They're trying to distract from what is important here, which is the kids. That's all we're interested in. I'm not interested in the drama around Sabine, not interested in the drama around Belinda. I'm not even interested necessarily in the drama surrounding Abe and Ella and what's happened there. I just want to know what's happened to those children. Where are they? And can we get a proper investigation going into what their claims were made publicly? The cries they put out on the internet need to be met. It'll never go away from me. I can never forget what they told me. I can never unhear what I heard. And I simply do not disbelieve their testimony. So as a concerned member of the public, I'm standing on the side of that I'd like to have this properly investigated. I do not believe. I tell you what's really fascinating here is a simple thing which I just think that people who wish to represent themselves as credible or innocent. Don't go around attacking and being as ugly, pernicious and nasty as some of what I've seen. Just for those people who really believe they have a case with this Hampstead hoax thing. All right, Angela, thank you. She's going offline for a bit, so thanks for joining us. It was good to hear from her. And of course, we always value having a chat with Angela because we do actually process things in a very similar way. You know, interestingly, our minds have had similar paths and patterns which have helped bring us to the cognitive points that we're at now. But going back to this Hampstead thing is that there is obviously a very, very deliberate attempt to try and cover this thing up because it does go all the way to the top. We know that there are pedophiles in Westminster. I myself, when I was working in mainstream media, was very acutely aware of the fact that Alistair Campbell squashed a documentary being aired on ITV about pedophiles in Westminster and in 10 Downing Street and all of that. So obviously, if there are circles, and let me tell you that they're not terribly big, they're pretty incestuous on all levels, they're going to lead somewhere. It's going to lead to someone important somewhere, which is why they have to squash this at the very root, and that is where it came from with these kids, get them to retract their statements. Any witnesses, discredit them. Any journalists who come out supporting them, discredit them. And that's what I've seen. Just a huge attempt to completely discredit me on every level. And this is what's making me realize that, hang on a second, you're making me more suspicious of what's going on here. Why would you do that? Why would you not try to sit down and have a reasonable discussion where you take me through your evidence and your proof of claim, which would more likely win me over to your side? And you know, because I'm sure that's what you're trying to do. Or are you just trying to cause distraction? Just trying to make an ugly mess? Just trying to discredit me by bringing up misunderstandings and false facts about my past, my beliefs, my understandings on things. So there's a couple of things that have been thrown at me as labels, which I'd like to address whilst we're waiting for anybody to call in on the toll-free number. We are obviously hoping someone will call in, someone has the guts to actually call in because we've made this available. Vicky, just confirm the toll-free number is up?
It is up.
It is up. The toll-free number is on the live stream, so feel free to call in and have a chat. If there's any questions you want to direct to me, I'll be more than happy to deal with them. As I said, we've made ourselves available because people have been saying that we're not available. I've been saying I'll talk to anybody face-to-face on Skype, you know, in a reasonable chat conversation where I'm not getting sideswiped all the time with unrealistic things. It's very difficult to communicate fast enough, you know, when you've got to type to people and you've got 20 other people chiming in, and it just becomes a bit of a mess. You get completely dumped on. So here it's a fairer platform. It's one-on-one conversations with people. So anybody who has any queries or questions or concerns can give us a call, and don't even have to give us your full identity. Give us a fake name if you want, but do call in. We want to hear from you. We're not hiding away. We're making ourselves open and available to anybody who has any claims or discrepancies they want to lay before us, they want us to answer to. We're here. We're not hiding away. We're making ourselves available. So please do come forward. We want to hear from you. We are not going to be censoring this. We are not going to be editing it. It will go out as is. This is broadcasting live anyway. So that is a preventative measure all round on making sure that nobody can censor or edit. There are live witnesses in the chat checking this out now. So feel free, guys, call in if you have any queries or concerns which you feel we need to address or be accountable for. I always stand in full accountability and in transparency of my actions and decisions. I'm not always saying I make the right decisions. I'm not always saying that I'm valid in everything that I say. What I am saying is that I'm on this journey and we share this journey with you all. And if you have some input, we would like to hear from you. But obviously, it's got to be done in a nice, dignified way. We don't lower ourselves to deal with the indignity of ugliness and perniciousness. I would like to address some of the comments that have been thrown at me in the videos, which I just thought was absolutely hilarious and opportunistic, to say the least, opportunistic ignorance. Firstly, yes, I am South African, and as you can tell, oh my God, I am white. So I am missing melanin under my skin. It doesn't make me a racist. I have less melanin under my skin than my native African counterparts. Does it make me a racist? I'm certainly not an apartheid apologist. I don't have anything to apologize with regards to apartheid. I myself am one of the persecuted group, from the persecuted group known as the Boers. There has been an ongoing genocide campaign going on against the Boers for over 100 years, and it's still going on to this day. Boer is the Dutch word for farmer, and it's a common knowledge that the farmers are being killed out in South Africa. It's called plaasmoord. Google it. You'll see there's a massive memorial for the plaasmoord murders. It's reaching genocidal proportions now. It's an entire ethnic group of people known as the Boers, who went on the Great Trek, who were the first sort of white tribe of Africa, and they were genocidally wiped out. 2/3 of their population were wiped out in the Anglo-Boer Wars by the British. Many women and children died in concentration camps at the hands of Lord Kitchener and his scorched earth policies. Lord Kitchener's great niece, by the way, a lady by the name, I think, of Sheila Butler, she is the lady who funded the UK column. So the UK column set up with Boer genocide money, just to kind of give you an idea of how that all ties in. But I myself have no issue with people of different color. It's the same as saying that I have issues with people who wear a shirt, a color that I don't like. You know, I'm fully aware that this meat suit we inhabit is just like wearing clothes. I don't identify with people's clothes or their meat suit. I identify with their soul and their heart. It doesn't matter what color that comes in. And as an artist, I like many different colors. I would never paint a painting just one color because it wouldn't be much of a painting. And that's the way I feel about reality, is that if everybody was the same, it would be awfully boring. Be that color, be that language, be that interest, be that outlook. We all have to have a variety of things in order to keep this world an interesting and functional place. And we can't all do the same job. There's many jobs on this planet that need to be fulfilled. And I embrace cultural diversity. I embrace cultural diversity. I'm very pro, what do we call that, preservation of culture. And for me, that is what I have learned to understand apartheid was a preservation of the native people's culture by allocating them separate self-running governments and homelands where their cultures and their languages can be preserved. Now, if you look at what else was going on in the 1960s when this policy of apartheid, also known as separate development, was established, we had genocide going on in Canada. We had genocide going on in Australia against the natives there. Of course, the Mohawks and the Haudenosaunee people of North America and Canada, and you've got the originals or aboriginals, whatever you want to call them, down in Australia. By the way, the original peoples of Australia in the 1960s in a national census were declared as fauna and flora, plant life. They were not even recognized as people. They were classed as lower than animals. Okay, so that's the contrast we have of what's going on in Australia. Whilst they were, wiping out entire islands of mainland Aboriginals in Australia, what we had going on in South Africa, on the other hand, was not death and genocide, but the preservation of cultures by allocating self-run independent homelands known as Bantustans in a project known as separate development, which took on the slang word apartheid. The word apartheid simply means the status of being apart. Apart is a synonym for separate. That's what separate development was. Now, there were a lot of people, obviously, who made grievances about the fact that there were things like pass laws, but what we were doing was giving them separate self-running countries. Tell me, can you travel from one country to another without a passport these days? You can't go anywhere without a passport. To say that we had pass laws which were repressive, I think pass laws now are repressive. The fact that we have to carry a passport now is repressive. But that's what was going on there. We were just expecting them to carry a passport between when they left their country, their native lands, and came into what wasn't their native lands, which is where sort of the Europeans and white people had settled. And there were a lot of native people who actually worked in the urban areas of the cities. And there was massive amounts of housing and development schemes which were put up for them, for urban Bantu people working in the urban areas. They didn't necessarily have to. It wasn't a case of they weren't allowed into the urban areas. They didn't have to stay in the Bantu homelands. They were most absolutely allowed in the urban areas, but it was like a different country. Technically, the borders and boundaries were different. They were then living technically in a different country. It wasn't their independent homeland state countries, the Bantustans. So, of course, they had to have their passports on them, as is the case with any foreign country you travel to nowadays. You normally have to have your passport with you. And that's what that was all about. Yeah, there were things, grievances about the fact that, there were, in the post office, there were lines for black people and there were lines for white people. But, I've heard stories about the white people saying that you would have the white people's line going all the way out the post office. And as a white person, you were not allowed to go stand in the black person's line. The black people said, we weren't allowed to go to the certain parks because it was for white people only. They created separate parks for the black people. It wasn't a case of like they weren't allowed there. Okay, there were separate lines created for the black people in the post office, separate lines for the white. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. For me, I'll stand in line behind a black person any day. I have no issue with that. I'm merely talking about what was happening at the time. The white people used to complain about the fact that they had to stand in line all the way out the post office when there was one person in the black person's line, but because they weren't black, they weren't allowed to go and get into the shorter queue. So apartheid affected white people as well, because the policies weren't necessarily practical on all levels. But what was exploited was the impracticalities of these policies with regards to the black people. And the reason they didn't want the cabal, the Jesuits, the reason why they didn't want separate development to work, and the reason why they labeled apartheid as such a bad thing and they parlayed it off in the media as such a bad thing, is because by giving the Bantus their own independent, self-run homeland states, it protected them inside the behemoth that is Southern Africa. These states were inside the greater South Africa country, which means they were protected by South Africa, number one. Number two, they were not subject to the repayments, conditionalities, implementations of the International Monetary Fund and the money manipulators, the international bankers, the World Bank, all that kind of thing, because they were getting aid from South Africa. Also, these people weren't being taxed, okay, and their money thus was not going. They were not having any money made off of them as working people going out to the international bankers. So in order to tax these people, they had to bring them all under a similar law, which is when they incorporated these people into a voter's role, saying that if you want to vote, obviously we're going to give you equal rights, which means you can now vote, but you also now have to pay tax. And it's the same thing as when they gave women the right to vote and gave women equality, and suddenly women now could work. It was not about giving them equal rights. Sylvia Steinem, who was sort of headed up the Women's Lib movement, she was a CIA asset. She even admitted that Miss Magazine, which was the vehicle for the feminist movement, was so well funded by the CIA that they did not need any paying advertisers. So very much the same as where they got all the women into work just so that they could get their children into school younger and control their minds sooner, and make more tax money because they suddenly now had a half the population not going to work. It's the same thing. They just wanted the tax money that was being made off a working black population, because there were many people who no tax money was being made off them because they weren't reachable. So really what it was about the enslavement of humanity, not the freedom or preservation of culture, which, we were led to believe that if you were anti-apartheid, you were pro-freedom. And that's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard. Just because we tried to preserve the native cultures didn't mean that we were being disrespectful to their culture. We were trying to preserve it by giving them their own areas to practice their own languages, to set up their own governments in their own languages, their own education systems in their own languages. It wasn't like what was happening in Canada in the state-run residential schools where the native kids were being forcibly indoctrinated out of their native tongue to speak English. And forcefully indoctrinated into the Christian religion. That's not what was happening. We were giving these people their own independent, self-run homelands to practice their own cultural traditions, whatever that might be, their own languages, not forcing the language and the religion of the white man upon them. That is what separate development was. It was never about disrespectful racism or disrespect to anyone's culture. It was about the preservation of culture. So for those people who want to say to me that I am a racist because I'm pro-apartheid, you know what, you're so bloody ignorant. Really, that's not what apartheid was about. Feel free to read my book, The South African Guide to the Global Conspiracy. It is banned in my home country. It is freely available on the internet. The ebook is available. There's 2 sites you can get it. You can get it on freedomcentral.info or stopsouthafricangenocide.org. Both places host my free ebook for a download, so you're most welcome to have a look at it, see all the evidence for yourself, and get to learn the truth about what really happened in South Africa. And yes, Nelson Mandela was a Knight of Malta, the most knighted man in Africa. In fact, he had more knighthoods than any man in Africa. Absolutely a Vatican puppet. And there's so much evidence and information about this particular story that I've also put into my books and explained, you know, a Knight of Malta, you have to take an oath. It's not a case of they just appoint you a knight and that's it, you don't do anything. No, you're part of their structure. You're their servant. You're their puppet. They use you and put you in places of power to control, and and that's exactly what happened with Nelson Mandela. So I just quickly, before I go on any further with that, I just want to say that just because I have an issue with Nelson Mandela, it's not because he was black. It's because the man was a terrorist. He was a killer when he was put into jail. He had killed and hurt many people. All right, he was a terrorist. They put him in jail. He refused to renounce the use of violence, which is why Amnesty International couldn't intervene in his case, because Amnesty International will only intervene in cases where people revoke the use of violence. Nelson Mandela never. He refused to revoke the use of violence. He believed that violence was an integral part of revolution. So, he was a violent man. And then he comes out suddenly a big hero. People think, because the media went into overdrive and put a suffering face on the apartheid movement, which was Nelson Mandela. No, he was put into jail because he killed people, okay? He should have done his lifetime in jail. He came out a supposed martyr, hero, and that is all through manipulation in the mainstream media, right? And still, you look at our country, South Africa is worse off after the presidency of Nelson Mandela than it was before. And even black people will tell you that. He sold out his people big time. It's not a black-white thing. I am not a racist. What I am is anti-terrorism. What I am is anti-puppet, anti-deception. And that comes in all shades and colors. Let me tell you, the biggest criminals on this planet, I'm sure they're in all colors. They're Saudi Arabian. You've got them in the South African government. You've got them, the Rockefellers. You've got the Rothschilds, supposedly Jewish. You've got them in every religion and race. I'm not picking on the blacks because I'm a white South African people. Please get that through your heads. It's very, very, very sad for you to say that, because I have such a love for our native culture. I grew up in KwaZulu-Natal in Zululand, and I love the native Zulu culture. I have such a love for it. I feel Zulu in my heart sometimes. And I know I get the white supremacists saying, "Oh, how can you say that?" You should actually see this interview I did with this girl called Sinead McCarthy. For those people who think I'm a racist, this girl hates me for not hating black people. She got all the white supremacist friends to rag on me because I say that I love black people, that I love the Zulu culture that I grew up around, that I embrace it, that I wish that it wasn't given such bad dogma. When we were in school, we were taught such horrible things about black people, which just wasn't true. So it's the same. We're all victims of programming and conditionalities which have been foisted upon us by a very controlled and manipulated society. None of us are really here to cause havoc. Well, I'm not. I really want to just create a better world, but create a vegetable garden, live abundantly, raise a family. I've chosen not to raise children because I'm so appalled at the state of the planet, which is why we do what we do, because we really genuinely want to create a better world. I'm starting to get a headache from talking too much, so I'm just going to check with Biggie to see if we've had any luck with anybody coming in with responses and questions. What's going on there, Biggie? You don't accept my ego, and that's a very valid question. It's a question that a few people have asked. So I'd like to explain that because, there's obviously a lot of misunderstandings around consumer. People think, oh, consumer, it's a bad thing, because we're taught to consume so much crap through media and advertising and all sorts. And, this is driving the hamster wheel is really done through our consumer habits. But this is the deal, guys. Whether or not you want to admit it, you're a consumer. You consume air when you breathe it. You consume food when you eat it. What we're trying to do here at Conscious Consumer Network is teach you to consume consciously. So that's why Conscious Consumer Network. And even when it comes to information, we've got to be conscious about the information we are consuming, because there's vast amounts of information put out onto the internet. And this is the message behind what Conscious Consumer Network was about, was really teaching us to consume consciously and being aware of how we consume and our consumer habits. For example, I don't shop at conglomerates. I like to support for small family-run little businesses when I do my grocery shopping. I go to a little Turkish deli, which is where I buy all my vegetables. And instead of going to, say, like a Tesco or an Albert Heijn or a Pick and Pay or whatever, or Sainsbury's, I go to a small family-run little place because I know that this little guy, I don't have to give the virtues of supporting the small guys opposed to the corporations. I think most people can understand that. But that's the kind of practical example that we're trying to lead with here, is that I do still have to eat. I do still have to get my food from somewhere. Within my environment, what is the most conscious choice? I live in an apartment. I don't have the space to grow it. At least let me get it from somewhere, someone who I know and trust. And that's not a conglomerate that's probably buying radiated and sprayed on food. That's the kind of thing I mean by Conscious Consumer Network. Ultimately, we all have to consume. Let's just make conscious choices in how we do that. That was the whole premise behind it. Is there anything else, Biggie? Yeah, I'm sure. There was a lot of manipulation going on from all sides. White people were manipulated into hating black people. Black people have been manipulated to hating white people. And ultimately, that's being done on purpose so that we fight each other instead of looking at who the real enemy is. It's not even the governments within our country. It's those that control our country from outside the borders through the banking system. Okay? Please understand that South Africa had the fourth reserve bank in the world was put into South Africa. All right, and I appreciate that might have been the view in the 80s for Live Aid for Mandela, but let's look at who runs Live Aid. Isn't that Sir Bob Geldof? Let's have a look at how occult Sir Bob Geldof is and what happened to his daughter, who was a member of the Aleister Crowley's cult. So there's a lot of concerns around that whole thing, and we know that the entertainment industry is rife with all sorts of deals with the devil and people who practice all sorts of weird cult shit. So, just that in its mere fact shows you which side they're on. Celebrities all the time are used to push a political agenda through their affiliations. I use Bono as an example. That's what that was all about, really. And Live Aid to raise awareness about Nelson Mandela. Yeah, of course that was done. Of course that was done. Wow, wonderful. The celebrities and the mainstream media get in on this. Guess what? Because they're controlled by the same people who control everything else. So of course they're pushing that agenda. First of all, and the other thing I'd like to say is I was just a kid in the 80s, so I actually don't even remember that particular concert. So to ask me for my opinion on it is a bit redundant because I can't really say anything based on experience, but I hope that answer suffices. Any other questions, Biggie?
No further at this point.
Okay, nothing further at this point, guys. Please, if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them into the chat. I'm obviously open to any discussion that anybody wishes to have over the subject. I'm not here to be a hater or an arguer or push my point of view. I'm merely disseminating information as it comes to me, and as I can then absorb it, process it, and put it out in bite-sized chunks so that people can understand things in a more simplistic manner. That is my only aim here. There's no clandestine agendas. I'm not an agent. I don't get any funding whatsoever from any government or corporations. Our network is a purely independently funded network, funded by the public and the broadcasters who use it. And that is how we operate. And we wish to make ourselves freely open and available to anybody who wishes to come in and talk to us. The toll-free number is on the screen. Please feel free to call in. I'm happy to chat to anybody who wishes to have a chat with me about any questions or anything they wish to put before me. A couple of other things I'll be dealing with as well with regards to some of the allegations that have kind of been put in my direction. A lot of people have had a go at me about the fact that I was involved with Kevin Annett and the ITCCS, and I did mention how that happened. You know, I was absolutely heartbroken when I had to come out and realize that this guy had completely been a con. Don't worry, it broke me. It's not something I was happy about doing, but I had to be honest because I realized he was hurting a lot of people and was potentially rather dangerous. And there was some interesting information from various women that came out that's like, oh God, you know, like we have to talk about what this guy's been doing. So which is why I continued with this whole Kevin Annett expose ongoing, you know, and I exposed it a year before Alfred Weber finally came out and admitted that there was something wrong with Kevin Annett's story. And that stands largely, his evidence stood largely on the basis that two aliases which Kevin Annett used, one of them being George Defort and the other one being Jeremiah Jordan, these two people simply did not exist. He claimed that they belonged to the ITCCS in Brussels, and these people actually do not exist. We've not been able to independently trace either of these two people. Now, what is interesting is both these people were involved in blogging, using their names to back Kevin Annett. So Kevin Annett looked like he had a bunch of followers when it was really Kevin Annett posing as various other names. And we had emails coming in from the ITCCS headquarters from Jeremiah Jordan, who was supposedly sending out a newsletter, which of course had Kevin Annett's PayPal details attached at the bottom, things like that. George Defort was signing off on legal documentation. Of course, George Defort doesn't exist. It's in fact Kevin Annett. So that legal documentation is in fact fraudulent. So very interesting to see how Kevin Annett was in fact operating at the time. Someone asked me the question of, on a chat, it was a guy called Khan Evil 9 on a video which I was answering to in some of the messages. He made a comment of saying, did I say that I was part of a 32 people jury that found 30 people guilty? I've never said that. Let me clarify what happened. I was busy trying to get a tribunal set up for what was going on in South Africa. There is an outright genocide going on in South Africa on two fronts. The vaccination front, firstly against the black people, giving them AIDS through vaccinations, and secondly against the farmers, which are not only white, farmers come in all colours, against the Boers of South Africa. So there's genocide on two fronts in South Africa, and it's not necessarily specific to one race. What I would say is if you actually look at the deeper information, you'll see that it's still a Jesuit agenda playing out to eliminate the descendants of the escapees from Europe during the Counter-Reformation, because a lot of the farmers who settled in South Africa were in fact Huguenots who escaped the Roman Catholic prosecution of Protestants in the 1600s. If you remember at the very beginning, South Africa was in fact just a halfway station for the Dutch East India Company, which had set up a camp at the Cape to give refreshment to those traveling over to the East Indies, now known as Indonesia. For many years, for like 30 years or so, that's all it was. It was a refreshment station with a couple of farms so that they could grow vegetables, nothing much else going on there. And then suddenly there was an influx of foreigners who were escaping. They were refugees escaping Roman Catholic prosecution. They were French, they were Dutch, they were German, they were all Protestant. And they came in, and these were known as the Huguenots. And they arrived in droves about 30 years after the initial landing of Jan van Riebeeck, and started then to settle on the outskirts of the Cape Colony, creating farms, starting the wine industry and the fruit industry and all that kind of thing. And they brought their amazing skills with them. Many prominent Huguenot families moved over to the Cape and started all over again, revitalizing local industries. And that was really how it all started. Many of the original people were in fact escapees of Roman Catholic prosecution, and many of the descendants of these people have in fact been genocidally wiped out by Jesuit-trained cults, which have been trained to brutally murder and sacrifice these people in the most horrible ways, torture them, burn them, flay them, skin them, draw and quarter them, all the kind of really brutal techniques you find going on in things like the Inquisition is being used now against the descendants of the Huguenots known as the modern-day Boers. So this is an old, the Jesuits are still acting on their old bloody vow, their oath, which in the oath they actually say that they will eliminate all Huguenots, Protestant liberals. They use those words, which the Huguenots is the group of people I'm descended from. Okay. I trace my ancestry back to the Huguenots. By the way, Charlize Theron is also descended from the Huguenots. So there's all of this kind of thing which plays into this, and you have to understand that the genocide is coming on a number of levels. And I put together some evidence along with a number of people, and we formed a group called Independence Commission Africa, which I was the media representative of, and I took all the information and filed it in a complaint to the International Criminal Court. We filed a case for genocide against the government of South Africa, and it was basically, we did this several times, and eventually when we started putting so much pressure on the International Criminal Court that they could do nothing but actually respond to it in some way, well, guess what happens? South Africa decides it wants to leave the ICC, which is amazing. I didn't know you could just do that. You can just, be a part of a treaty, and when it doesn't suit you anymore, you can just pull yourself out of the treaty, because there's obviously a treaty that was set up to back the whole process of this International Criminal Court. And I would just like to say that Israel and America are two countries which are not signed up to this International Criminal Court treaty, because guess what? They are two of the biggest warring states on the planet. So, of course, they wouldn't sign up to War Crimes Tribunal, now would they? Of course not. So we did, in our ignorance, try to bring this case before the ICC, but all it did was prove exactly what we have been learning all along, and that everything is manipulated and controlled. There's no due process. The court system is so corrupt. It's not about protecting the rights of the people. It's everything to do with making money. So that's how I kind of ended up wanting to work with Kevin Annett, was because I was undergoing this whole process myself for my people in South Africa. I had a huge court case and a massive group of people we were working with to bring this case to trial in an international forum. And after years of work, we had to give up and go home when South Africa finally pulls out of the ICC. And they had to do that because so much pressure was being put on them. And they actually said in their statement when they pulled out of the ICC treaty that the ICC was thinking of prosecuting them, and there was too much pressure being put on African countries by the ICC. Yeah, of course, because there's a lot of human rights atrocities going on there. So, I, of course, ignorantly thought, all right, if the International Criminal Court won't hear me, we have to try and find another way to get a tribunal going, which is why Kevin Annett's International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State and what he was proposing seemed so appealing to me. And if there was even a small chance that we could bring a little bit more awareness to what was happening to my people in South Africa, I was going to give it a bash. And that's really what we would try to do. But we didn't even get to bring any of the case that I had, my people's case, the original reason I got involved with Kevin Annett in the first place. We didn't even get a chance to bring that before any kind of tribunal, because Kevin Annett made such a hatchet job of the first tribunal he did, where he supposedly found 30 people guilty of crimes. I would just like to say he did ask me to be a jury on that particular tribunal. I agreed to it. However, I was never sworn in as a juror. And before I knew it, he had rendered a verdict. And I didn't understand how he could render a verdict when none of the jurors were sworn in, when none of us were brought to a common location to oversee the evidence under in a controlled environment. There was no due process. It was a complete kangaroo court. And of course, he made such a mockery of the whole thing. And anybody who had been anywhere, even remotely associated with it, came out looking really bad, which is when I decided that I absolutely had to tell them what I knew. And I knew a lot about Kevin Annett's internal manipulations, right down to how he actively taught me how to fraudulently make court documents. He sat there showing me how he makes his court documents by cutting and pasting stamps and photocopying letterheads onto other pieces of paper, he was very honest about, what a hatchet cut job it was, and that nothing was legitimate. And he thought that he was trading me and I was just going to follow along in his footsteps and do what he did. But I'm sitting there going, I can't believe you're actually showing me how you commit fraud. And it was with this evidence I was able to then come forward and put the definitive nail in the coffin with regards to Kevin Annett, that there's absolutely no doubt as to what this guy is, what a connie is, and exactly how he operates. So that's kind of how we got involved with Kevin Annett. I just want to pop over to Biggie and see, Biggie, are there any questions?
Moving on.
So we've not had any questions from the Peanut Gallery, guys. Please do get in touch. I keep getting hammered on the forum saying that I'm not giving anybody a chance to speak. It's not. Huh?
We got one.
Oh, we got a question. Right. Go on, Biggie. Whew. That's an interesting question. I generally don't give advice. That's the honest truth. I don't tell people how to deal with things, because I also believe that taking a solution and then applying it in a blanket fashion is disrespectful and unfair to people's individual circumstances and situation. A lot of the time that happens, you see that happen in court cases where they take a blanket law and apply it to a delicate situation, and then the mother ends up losing her kids to an abusive husband because it wasn't the right course of action. So I think you've got to take each individual case on its own merits. Dealing with the first part of that question, given what I've seen of online communities, let me just say that the online world is the new predatorial playground. And I'm not just talking against children. I'm talking on every level. There's a lot of energetic harvesting and vampiring going on. So I'm very glad that whoever brought this question forward, thank you very much. It's a very valid question. And I see why you brought it forward, because it's important to be aware of the dangers of online manipulations. You see, most people just aren't psychologically trained to understand that there is this kind of deep level manipulation and predatorial engagement going on online. There's actually paid agents. Myself and Hope Girl have done a number of shows about this, about online cults, about J-Trig, which is an agency funded by the CIA that actually has set up a number of online trolls to go in and just cause absolute havoc for people. So, you know what? My advice for dealing with people who come to you with ludicrous allegations, no one knows my truth. Only I know what's true to me or not. When people come and throw something at me, I know, well, that's just absolutely untrue. What I have to do is look at where it comes from. Is it coming from a place of they're saying to me, you're this and this and this, or are they asking me, why do you feel that way about a certain thing? I will always answer the why. For me, it's always in the why. They're curious. They want to know why I feel a certain way about something. I'll give them my reason why. They may not always agree with my reason and then still choose to label me whatever they want. That's fine. But just throwing an allegation, label me, she's a racist, she's a white supremacist, or whatever, because you don't understand all the facts about me, I think is very narrow-minded and very naive, because it's not a black or white thing. I mean, literally or figuratively or pun-like, life ain't black and white. There's many subtle shades to consider. And likewise, dealing with each situation that we come across has to be done on its own individual merits. So I'm not going to give anybody advice to people who get stuck in the whole attacked by and fronted with unnecessary animosity, negativity, comments, false labeling, harassment, slandering. What I would say generally works for me is if it's that kind of low level negativity, just ignore it, because all you're doing is feeding the beast by actually giving into it and by allowing them to upset you. And, I've learned I don't get upset by it anymore. I used to. So I know how hit up I used to get by things that people I'd never met and probably never will was saying. Even if it was something very small, oh my God, look what they're saying. I don't do that anymore, because I realize that half the time these people themselves are probably being manipulated into certain points of view, or themselves are probably dealing with personal traumas or bad destructive patterns from their aberrant programming, which obviously is a part of our aberrant society. A lot of the time I just try to be empathetic and think to myself, where is this coming from? What is it they're really after? What is the true motivation behind this? And based upon that, I'll then decide whether or not I will deal with this person's particular argument, claim, subjugation, whatever it might be. but I certainly won't do it if it's just for the case of energetic vampirism, manipulation, conflict causing, separatism. I won't feed that. So I choose not to engage that. I hope that was an okay answer. Biggie, is there any other questions?
Yeah, one more.
Yeah, go on. Now, that is one of those comments where I say I'd rather not put my energy into it because that's such a loaded question. Peanut gallery is actually just a throwaway sort of reference to those who might be listening. It's a colloquial term. It's not actually calling anybody peanuts. It's not a comment on anybody's brain capacity or ability to reason or anything like that. It's quite literally just a colloquialism, and I'm really sorry if the wit in that eluded you. It was not meant to be derogatory and whatsoever. Anything else?
No further questions at this point.
No further questions at this point. Again, guys, that toll-free number is on the screen. Feel free to call in. Otherwise, we will be ending the show. We do have Fiona Barnett's interview coming up in Ailish to Avalon show. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We will be playing the two Candy Girl show. It's the two parts of Candy Girl that we'll be playing back-to-back before Ailish to Avalon show, which probably those airings will probably start just as soon as I finish the show, if we can get the recordings transcoded in time. Biggie and I are always fighting against technical issues here at Conscious Consumer Network, and for some reason we're having a lot of them at the moment, a couple of hacks here and there and all sorts. It seems that a lot of attention and pressure being put on us in every direction. So for those of you who want to deal with anything that needs to be dealt with, I'm here. I'm open to you. I'm not hiding away. There's a number of people who were throwing allegations at me, and I said, well, bring them out to an open forum. Let's discuss them like adults. Bring it around the table. If we're ever going to create a better world, we need to be able to come around a table and discuss and be okay with each other's differences, not label each other, because I look at something differently to you, or I must be bad, I must be a shill. Try to understand what the reasons are for my points of view. I'm always willing to discuss that. I don't feel that I ever need to justify myself to anybody, but I do make myself open and accountable. In fact, I'm probably more accessible than most people you would ever find who run this sort of a network. I don't pretend to be the big I am or shelter myself off from the public. I'm very much all access. I don't ban people from posting on my Facebook page. It's never a case of I'm the only person who's allowed to post it. Anybody's allowed to post on my Facebook page. If it becomes abusive or I find it irrelevant or derogatory, I delete it. I don't feed the monster. If people become repeatedly abusive or they become a nuisance, I will block them. But at no point will I make a space, which I've had for 10 years, being my Facebook page, a place that can't be engaged in. So I've always had that open space there, just as I have this open space now. I'm not trying to control, censor anything. What I do want is to engage in a respectful way. And it's often very difficult to determine the parameters of respectful engagement when you walk into a viper's den and all they want to do is attack and throw things at you. So I tried doing that yesterday. I went and made a few comments on a YouTube channel that was not my own or that wasn't my domain or my Facebook or social media environment. And that's what I experienced, was an unfair playing field. What we are presenting here is a fair playing field for anybody who wants to have open discourse and discussion, who feels that there's anything they want me to account for or to answer to. Here I am, live on air. I am presenting myself before a jury of my peers. Please come forward and make your claim. I'm right here. I'm open to you all. This is your last opportunity. The Skype, I beg your pardon, the toll-free number is on the screen. Feel free to call in. We will take your call. We are wanting to hear from you. Biggie, are there any more questions?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay, guys. We're running out of steam here, so I'm just gonna talk a little bit more, give it another 5 minutes. Hopefully somebody will take me up on my offer to call in on the toll-free number. Please feel free to do so. I've made myself available. I've come forward to talk to you all. I'm not hiding away. I'm not censoring. I'm not ignoring anybody's questions, concerns, or queries. I simply wish to come around a table and clear up any misunderstandings that there might be, because the honest truth is, I just want to create a better world. I'm really so sick of the suffering. I'm so sick of the injustice, and I'm so sick of seeing good, innocent people having their lives destroyed, particularly young children. I'm sick of the crumbling and backward structures which don't benefit us and only seek to drain us energetically and make us sick. And they make a lot of money off of our suffering. I myself am a survivor of vaccine injury, so I know that suffering. I know exactly what it is like. Yes, Biggie?
This is funny.
What does it matter what color he is? I mean, if you love him, you love him, right? That shouldn't. That's bizarre. I can't believe someone's actually. It's like, would you kiss someone wearing a shirt you didn't like? I mean, it's the person I care about, not the shirt that they're wearing. I have no issue with whatever color the person is. To me, it's a simple case of, if you're a good person, I like you. If we vibe, I like you. It's got nothing to do with your skin color. I have kissed a black man, and that's the honest truth. If Biggie was black, I would still have married him. That's the honest truth. I love Biggie irrespective of what color he is. In fact, at the moment, Biggie's gone and colored his hair blue and red. So he's very colorful right now. I have no issue with color. I'm not a white supremacist. I, honest to God, would have married Biggie if he was black. But the simple fact is I'm meant to be with Biggie, and he happens to have light skin. I would have loved him just as much if he was black. Are there any other questions?
No. No,
Yeah. Look, I think it's a valid question, because a lot of South Africans, hardcore Afrikaner, and I do come from the hardcore Afrikaner stock. They're like, oh man, you don't want to mix the races, because the children will come out and they'll be half breeds, and they won't know whether they're black or whether they're white. Look, that attitude is so archaic. I know some beautiful half and half kids. In fact, the dude who runs the French section of CCN, called Cyrillial, he's a mix, and he's just the most lovely person. His sister's incredibly stunning. I mean, just look at Beyonce and Halle Berry. They're both mixes, and they're incredibly stunning. So you wouldn't go up to them and go, so tell me, do you identify more with being black or being white? It just would never occur to me to do that. So I don't see people by the color of their skin. I don't even see them by their culture. For me, what matters is what's in their heart and what's in their mind. That's the important thing. That is what I love. And yeah, I really can't think of anything else I wish to add to that. Biggie, is there anything else coming up?
No, that's it.
All right, guys. Last chance. Toll-free number is on the screen. Feel free to call in if you wish to speak to me and ask me any questions. We as yet have had absolutely no takers on the call-in open invitation. I honestly cannot make myself more vulnerable to you if I tried. Here I am, open to anybody who wishes to come before me, lay a claim at my doorstep, make an allegation in my direction. Feel free to do so. I am open to it. Here it is. Pick up the phone, make that call. I sound like I'm running a telethon. Well, I'm open to it. If anybody wants to speak to me, I'm right here. I'm not hiding away. Just so we know, live on air, for the record, there it is. Okay. So if nobody else is going to take me up on anything, I think I'm just going to wrap up for this evening, because I'm really tired of trying to find things to talk about to make this sound like it's going to be any more interesting. I don't have anything prepared, because none of this was scripted. I normally always have something prepared for every show. This is never meant to be a scripted venture. This was meant to be a case of I'm here to take on and deal with information in real time. Not I've got someone whispering to me behind the scenes, or I've got a whole bunch of scripted information ready for me. I want to deal with things honestly, openly, and transparently. And this is what I'm here to do right now. So feel free to call in. One last chance for you to call in if anybody wants to speak to me and lay any allegations at my doorstep. As I said to you before, I'm on this journey of discovery like anybody else. I don't always get it right, but define right. Who's to say that the right step this time might not be the wrong step the next time, or the wrong step this time might not lead you onto a bigger adventure the next time? Everything is a matter of perception. At the moment, what I'm looking to find out is, with regards to the Hampstead case, really we just want to know how those kids are, what they're doing, what they're up to, and if we can get an independent investigation going or not into what has really happened there. I still stand by my story and my experiences in Hampstead. Vicky and I lived there together. We both went through this together. This is a very real, visceral experience for us. We were there for a number of years, and we lived very close to that school. So, I remember staying home from work one day with a huge, huge toothache. I'd swelled up, and I had to go to the dentist. And I remember laying there trying to get to sleep, and all I could hear was the noise of children playing. And it was oddly comforting. And as I lay there, and I thought to myself, so this is what it sounds like when you're home during the week, because obviously I was always working during the day and never got to hear that. And there was a sound that I hadn't heard before, the sound of the children playing in the school, which I could hear from where I was staying, because I was right on that school that's been implicated in this whole Hampstead mess. So obviously I've experienced that. I want to know what's really going on, what was really going on in that school, and is there any truth to any of this? There's just so many things that happened to me when I was there that just really, really gives weight to their story. Things that at the time I didn't really know how to categorize or process that. But coming to know what I've come to know, I simply can't ignore what this is all pointing to. And it's in a direction that's very uncomfortable to look. So on that note, I would just like to say my new book, Dragonology, is almost ready for release. The writing phase is finished. We are just in the editing phase now. It should be out for the 1st of September. So we're spending August on getting that book ready. The website is updragonology.info. If anybody wants to really get an understanding of the true dark nature of the beast, I think I've done a reasonable job of putting it all together. There's 2 seasons of Dragonology. You're welcome to watch episodes 1 to 13. And there's also 2 documentary films you can watch called Chasing the Dragons Part 1 and 2, which of course delve deep into what this is really all about, what cult ritualism is really all about. That's all there for you folks. So you just got to do the research. One last check, Vicky. Is there anything else I have to deal with before I choose to close?
Nothing working time.
Are you sure?
Unless you want to talk about fake tents, no.
This actually isn't a fake tan, by the way. No, please, any insulting things like that. This is a real tan. You can actually see this is, if you push on it, it makes the white marks like you do when you've been in the sun. Not a fake tan. Okay, this is a very real tan. I could even show you. I even have the sunglasses marks around my eyes from wearing sunglasses in the sun. You can see that's whiter than that. I don't use fake tan because I don't put anything except coconut oil on my skin. I don't lay in the sunbeds. I wait for summer to come around, and then I'll just go crazy for the few weeks that we do have a little bit of sun. And then in winter I go, milky white again. So this is not a fake tan. Any other questions like that, Vicky? Anything else that I have to put a sock in right now? Huh?
God, no.
Really?
No.
Come on.
No, this really isn't anything.
Are you sure?
All the trolls have disappeared. They've chickened out the moment you started being available to them.
So all the trolls chickened out the moment I started being available to them. That's very interesting, you see, because they are not here to sort this mess out. They're only here to cause chaos, destruction, and distraction. And this is very clear now, okay, because I've made myself available. I'm sitting here saying, look, I will talk to you one-on-one. I will have a conversation with you. If you've got valid points you want to put across to me, man, I'm all yours. I'm here to listen. But if you're not going to come forward, you're just going to be behind the scene and poke through the cage from, when my back is turned to you, there's no point in engaging with that. There was a question that came earlier. What do you do? How do you deal with trolls? And the simple fact is that if people go to a level that you don't go to, then don't go there. There's no need for you to lower yourself to appease someone else's sick desire to vampire energy off you. Because that, folks, is what it comes down to. This is a game of energy harvesting. This is what it's all about. This is why these trolls exist. They get some kind of sick satisfaction out of causing all this mayhem online. And well done, by the way, because you've got a whole bunch of really good people believing that this Hampstead thing is a hoax. I'm sorry, but anyone with any powers of discernment watch those interviews with those children knows what those kids were going through. Okay, so what I want to say to those people who have just, decided that those children must be lying, wow. Are you really sure about that? Are you really willing to stand by that? I mean, what if these kids really were abused and hurt in that way? I mean, how are you going to feel about learning the truth? Are you so invested into your ideology that you're not willing to come back on that at all? Because for me, it seems that people are more invested in being right than in finding out what the truth is. So guys, feel free. I'm here only 3 more minutes. I'll be going on the half hour. If anybody wishes to call and have a discussion with me, I'm more than willing to have a discussion with you about this. I'm not hiding away. I'm not making myself unavailable. People have been claiming because I won't attend the Hoaxstead research blog that, because I won't go play in their playground under their rules, no less, which is delete anything of value I put on there and play up anything that they want to play up. Because I won't do that, apparently I'm not playing fair. No, I'm making myself available live on air. Nothing can be edited. This is live, folks. We created an environment where everybody could be approached and dealt with in a fair manner, respectfully, where there's no chance of anybody triggering any conflicts or sparking off any controversy like that, because this is what they really want. They don't want a controlled environment where we can all come together and sit and talk nicely. What they want is an environment where they can cause as much chaos and destruction as possible with their ugliness, their nastiness, their taunting, their comments, and of course all the lovely YouTube videos. Thank you, by the way, for taking the time to make those YouTube videos. As someone who works in production myself, I can see that there's someone who's very, very, very dedicated here, which makes me think that there's definitely someone is either trying to cover something up by picking on the most ridiculous things. I mean, the one comment, and I do want to comment on this because it's so funny. It just shows how little these people actually know about me. The one comment was because I'd mentioned Belinda McKenzie's house was a mansion. Now, bear in mind, I've never been to Belinda McKenzie's house, and I want to know it is in Highgate, and people say that is, people can go say that it's quite large, and it is a house. It is in London, and someone said that it was very, very big. Maybe I should not have used the word mansion, okay? But someone put a comment on, Belinda McKenzie's house. This was on a video. A mansion, it must be a South African thing. Yeah, in South Africa, there are people who live in shacks that live really, really badly. And I'm very aware of this. I wasn't one of them. I grew up in a mansion on the beach, like a proper one. Biggest bed to my house. As I said in my show earlier with Angela, I once walked around my house and counted 11 lounge suites scattered in the house. A beautiful sea view, swimming pool, and, it was a stunningly gorgeous home. My mom was the kind of person who redecorated her home every couple of years. She was a property developer, so she was always adding onto the house, making it bigger. We had an outside bar area down by the pool, which was totally separate from the house, so you could have a big fat party in there, not disturb anybody in the house. Really lovely. And it was big, and we had a holiday home down in Cape Town as well. So it's not an African thing. It's not like I grew up poor. It's not like I grew up in a tiny little shack like the majority of people in Africa do. I was one of the very few who did have a very fortunate upbringing. I had very hardworking parents who made a lot of money and gave me a good life, materially at least. Got to travel a lot, got to always eat in good restaurants, got to always wear beautiful clothes. Had the most stunning wardrobe as a teenager. My mom loved shopping. I used to go with her. We'd come back from the shop with bags of shoes. My dad used to, oh my God, what is it with you ladies and shoes? But I had a good life growing up that way. But those material things never made me happy because of the control and abuse in other areas. So, it's not like, sport little rich girl, poor thing. No, I honestly had a really rough time with the abusive, controlling nature of the family and home environment that I grew up in, which is very, very strict, very militant. So that is my story. It's not like I don't know what a mansion looks like. I can assure you my family home that I grew up in is probably 3 times the size of what Belinda McKenzie lives in. I know what a mansion looks like. Sorry for the slip of tongue if I didn't recognize that it didn't fit into your category of mansion. As I said, I've never been to Belinda McKenzie's house, and making the quip that, it must be a South African thing, just shows you how much you know about me, shows you how much research you've done. Are there any other questions? I'll even deal with the stupid stuff at this stage because I'd really like to put a sock in some of this. Biggie, is there any stupid stuff? All right, good. Seems like all the trolls have buggered off, and that's what I'm going to do because I think we need to get more important stuff on the air. So I'm going to free up the airwaves on this network. I want to thank any of you who bothered wasting your time tuning into this drivel. I wish I didn't have to sit here like this and parade myself around like a puppet. Or puppet's probably the wrong word, like, sit here and go, oh, come talk to me. I'll talk to you. Because I feel stupid doing it. But I've done it because I want to make myself available to you all. So here I am making a fool out of myself for you all because I want to be available and I want to be transparent. The opportunity's been here. Nobody's taken me up on it. Not one person's called in. We've had a couple of questions, and thank you to those good people who do put good questions forward. We'll always answer questions that are of value and relevant. Of course, thank you to our friends, and we want to also thank you to our foes who have bothered to tune in tonight. This has been a very interesting reprisal of whatever we want to call it. And I suppose I will be with you all again very soon. I do have Conscious Communities on Thursday, so make sure you're tuning in for that, folks. If you are watching, make sure you're watching Fiona Barnett's Candy Girl, parts 1 and 2, as well as the Fiona Barnett interview with Adish de Avalon, which will take place at 11 p.m. BST. And that is it for me, guys. It's been great to be with you all. My name is Ben Melvie, and I'll be with you all again very soon. Goodbye for now.
Conscious Consumer Network was designed to create a live broadcast TV network for free and independent media and has been live on the air since the 1st of January 2015. CCN gets millions of minutes watched every month and is viewed in over 140 countries, having produced around 1,400 shows and counting.
And it's very hard to get on the mainstream media, of course, the corporate media that's getting tighter and more monopolized and more restrictive for any outside information.
The live broadcasts are free to view and all shows are archived in high definition on YouTube. CCN plays host to a stellar team of broadcasters and producers, all of whom rely on the network to get their message and information out to the world. CCN has continued to evolve, constantly seeking to create greater media usage and opportunities for both broadcasters and viewers, including supporting projects such as the newly launched ConsciousCommunities.org, a brand new social media platform that is free to use and has been created for those dedicated to the pursuit of freedom, justice, peace, and sustainability to come together and co-create the solutions to a better world. Due to the constant heavy usage, we are in need of replenishing and replacing of key hardware and infrastructural wear and tear. This includes the fixing and replacing of parts of the live broadcast equipment system, as well as increasing storage capacities for content and projects. Without this, CCN and its affiliate projects will simply not be able to continue. Conscious Consumer Network is a publicly funded project, and it is up to you all to keep CCN on the air. Support our funding drive with a donation or become a monthly pledger. We thank you all for supporting free and independent media.